And I knew I also wanted to coach. Central had good football. Central Michigan had good football. And they had a very good athletic department, a physical education department, and they had a lot of coaches around the state. And I went to this school district. I was single at the time. At the Christmas of the second year I taught there, I got married. And then I taught there, I think 3 more years. And then that year, at the end of that year, I decided I wanted to go to Indiana University and get a master's degree in physical education. So I got a scholarship. I worked for Dr. Bookwaller, who was head of research at the Indiana University School of Health and Physical Education. And I also did some work for Dr. Councilman, who was the swimming coach at Indiana at the time. He won, 20 consecutive NCAA national swimming titles. So at the end of that year, after I got my master's degree, then I went back to my hometown. But in that year, my wife at the time was forging prescriptions for drugs that were uppers. Well, I knew her in high school, and she went to nurses training. And then after she got out of nurses training, and after I was teaching at this place, we got married. And one day when we were at Indiana University, the district attorney for the county where Bloomington is knocked on my door and said, "Well, Mr. Andrews, your wife is forging prescriptions, and unless you get her to quit that, we'll have to bring charges against her, and she'll get arrested and spend some time in jail." She went home to her parents, went to a doctor, went and got some mental help, psychological help, and then after Christmas we came back to Indiana, and she quit working at the Bloomington Hospital and worked at the next town north of there. And for the next 15 years in her life, she off and on used drugs. She'd drink a glass of scotch about that big straight at night, and then she'd take an upper to go to work the next day. She did this for off and on for 15 years. And so when we were at Indiana, she lost a baby because of the effects of the drugs. And then when we went back to my hometown and close to where she was pregnant, and she was worried, and I was worried about the impacts upon our daughter. Finally, our daughter was born, and she didn't have any health deficiencies, or she wasn't deformed, or didn't have any consequences of all the alcohol and drugs that her mother had consumed. But we spent 15 years. We had our one daughter, and then we adopted Michael. and it was very difficult. I mean, it was if a person hasn't had the experience of living with someone who used drugs and used alcohol, uh, they're not easy to get along with. It impacts their personality, uh, and it take lots of them never dry out, never get rid of using them. And back then it was there was not anywhere near as much understanding of it as there might be today. So life was had that along with it. And so when we went to Big Rapids to teach, um, I had, we had a discussion I had a discussion with her mother and father and with my mother. And so rather than having the daughter stay at home if I was going out of town to a football game, I would have the daughter go to either her mother's house or to my mother's house, because you just couldn't tell if Pat was going to be able to take care of herself and the child uh, when you weren't there, or whether she was going to be doped up or use alcohol, which was really difficult.